Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen who are in attendance and to any who are participating by Zoom. And I welcome you to the last public meeting at which we take comment before we begin our deliberations on the map that we're going to recommend. Mrs. Sosa Acosta for the roll.
Thank you. And for the roll call, Chair Johnson,
Present.
Honorable Commissioner White,
Present.
Honorable Commissioner Khan,
Here.
and on towards the next slide, we have today's agenda. Chair Johnson, you may open public comment when ready.
One second. There you go. All right, what we'd like to do is have all the public comments that relate directly to the choice of the map that we recommend be held until the second session of public comments. If there are any comments on any other item related to the commission's work, we'll take them at this time. But we think it would be preferable to have all of the comments everyone wishes to make in one round before we begin deliberations. Any comments at this point? Okay. Any Zoom participants that we know of?
Give me 1 second, Chair. If there's anyone in the public that would like to speak on an item not on the agenda, please click on the hand raise feature. If there's anyone in the public that would like to speak on an item not on the agenda, please raise your hand. There are no comments, Chair.
All right. Thank you. Let's move on to the approval of the minutes, and then we'll go on to the next step. We have 2 sets of minutes. Let me find them here. Well, I know I read them. Why can I not find them? I think is it the March 9th and March 14th minutes, right?
Yes, that's
I don't
correct.
know why this is not turning off my documents. Let's start with the March 9th minutes. Any additions, corrections, comments? Okay, hearing none, and I have none. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and I agree, those are approved. Here we go, I found them. And the second is the March 14th, 2022 minutes. Any comments, additions, corrections by the members of the commission? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right, and I agree, and those are also approved. Okay. So we're going to move on directly to the item, thank you, for today. It's a big day for all of us. So, because we are by nature public speakers, I'd like, before we begin the public comments, which will be our final opportunity to hear from all of you before we select a map to recommend to the City Council, I wanted to say a few personal words, and I'll invite Judges White and Khan to speak later as well. We've gotten to know several of you, at least a little bit, and your fidelity and your commitment to the electoral process has been very inspiring to us. We want you to know that each of us feels honored to have been asked to take on this responsibility. We were provided our job description from the beginning to assure that the city's 6 electoral districts comply with state and federal law. Having spent our lives in the law, we know that that would not be nearly as simple as it sounds. But one of the best parts about selecting a career in law is that you get to learn something new every day. And we have definitely learned a lot from all of you. Incidentally, we began our work in the face of a delayed census, the results of which raised misgivings for all of us on many levels, but which we are bound to recognize and with which we are working. For obvious reasons, the Benally's judgment required that non-Santa Barbara residents sit on this commission. We have no vested interest in your political life. The downside, of course, is that we don't know this beautiful city the way you do. Growing up in a family of 5 children in Hollywood, for me, Santa Barbara was a place your parents went to for the weekend, mostly to get away from us. And living in Ventura for the last 50 years, it's the city people drive through Ventura to get to go to those weekends that they need to get away from kids like us. So we've gotten to know it in a very different way. The staff of the city, particularly the city attorney, Mr. Colon, and deputy city attorney, Ms. Sosa Acosta, have been exceptionally helpful in educating us, including arranging my spur-of-the-moment request for a road trip through the neighborhoods of the city. Thank you, Brandon Bodette. Independent counsel, Marguerite Mary Leone, has provided clear and complete legal advice throughout, including yesterday's legal memorandum to us discussing the most recent Supreme Court case on redistricting maps. Ms. Leone has been clear and complete. The law itself is far from clear and is constantly evolving, including as of yesterday. The many speakers who have attended the public meetings have been extremely helpful. Right now, I have 54 pages of single-spaced typed notes on what I've heard so far, and I'm sure that will expand today. All of us have taken notes. Judge Kahn is the brave one. He writes it by hand. I think Judge White does, too. I can't read my handwriting at all, so I don't do that. But we've all reviewed our notes in anticipation of today's final remarks. We now understand the importance of the West Side Community Center and the difference between the 101 bordering a district and running through a district. We see very clearly the roles of elementary, junior high, and high schools and neighborhood associations in redistricting. We've come to understand the history of the redistricting following the Benales judgment. We have learned quite graphically, thanks to Dr. Phillips, that to have 2 actual majority Latino CVAP districts would have required classic gerrymandering. That is, we'd have a map that did look like a salamander wiggling its way through it. Instead, we have, through the public comment process and the expertise of our attorneys and our demographer, gotten ever more carefully constructed maps, which take into account the constitutional imperative of not diluting minority voting rights while honoring the requirements of contiguity and maintaining neighborhoods and communities of interest. And we have learned that the residents and representatives of each district have a genuine and sincere interest in the well-being of the residents and businesses and property of the residents of every other district, as well as their own. Several citizens spoke to us about the prodigious work done to create the districts after the Benales judgment and wondered aloud why we were tampering with that effort. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Well, were it not for the shifts of population, which created disparities between and among the populations of each district, retaining the current districts would have almost certainly failed judicial review had the old maps been challenged. We are a nation and a city constantly on the move for good reasons and bad. The Constitution requires us to re-examine our distribution every 10 years, and so here we are. As in all of life, choices must be made. There are multiple values to be balanced in this process. Having part of the downtown or the ocean area in a district, keeping schools and neighborhoods intact, maintaining the majority and minority goals of Benales to the greatest extent possible among them. And overlying all this, we must be mindful of the Federal Voting Rights Act, which disallows racial gerrymandering as the sole or primary consideration in districting, while at the same time reminding us of the need for majority-minority districts to ensure true political opportunity for all groups. The one-man, one-vote premise, we need to rewrite that. The one-person, one-vote premise, which means every citizen's vote counts as much as every other citizen's, makes us wary of large deviations in the populations of various districts, which is why we have to go through this process at all today. We're particularly mindful of California's Voting Rights Act, which prioritizes contiguity, integrity, compactness, and communities of interest. It's a lot to keep in your head all at once. As we look in the maps at contention at this last public meeting, I think our compliance with the state criteria are obvious. We have geographic continuity. We've shown strong efforts to keep neighborhoods and communities of interest intact. We have compactness. Our demographic expert, Dr. Phillips, has responded to every one of our requests based on your concerns, promptly and expertly, and he's worked closely and cooperatively with the District Elections Committee and all interested public persons, all of which have led us to the 4 maps before us, which we selected at the last meeting, and the final map presented today, the Community of Interest map. In the end, we can't have everything, but the comments we have heard so far and the expert work of Dr. Phillips has left us, I believe, with some very good choices. After the public comment period and before we begin our panel discussion on which map to recommend, I will ask Judge White and Judge Collins to say a few words as well so that you'll understand our thinking. For now, let us begin our last lesson. And we're going to begin with public comment from those persons who are present today. Sebastian Aldana, Jr. This is the one and only public comment period. Say anything you think we need to know.
Good afternoon. My name is
Good
Sebastian Aldana, Jr. For one, thank you for all your time. I know this was very time-consuming, and you heard a lot of comments. Of the 4 maps that were selected on the 14th, I would myself recommend 101 RE. That pretty much keeps everything intact. And that's myself and a lot of people in the community, that's what they were shooting for. The other 104E, DEC EUB, and DEC EU, were, in my opinion, were a little disturbing. But of the 4, I would go with 101 RE, along with the new DEC Community of Interest plan. I would hope that only those 2 would be considered. I know on District 1, there's no changes, but it does enhance District 3, which I like. Years ago, that was my old stomping ground, so I can tell that it includes Harding School, the West Side Center, which the district representative, that's what he wanted. And it also includes Brinkerhoff to be part of District 6, which was basically a verbal agreement with Tony Vasallo. Back in 2015, he wanted Brinkerhoff to be on the District 6. So from 101 RE to the new DEC Community of Interest plan, I like the new one, the new DEC. The only thing on District 1, on the top northeast corner, there's a little chunk that's going to be removed. I sent an email requesting if the lower portion can stay in District 1, and then the upper rim portion to be part of District 4, because the upper part, like Delagara Road, APS, and Chiquita, that tends to, those concerns are the same as District 4. Over here on the flatland, we have different concerns. And I believe you did receive the email, not positive, yes? Yeah, because that was to include the 700 and 600 block of North Voluntario, the 11, 12, and 1300 block of East Coda up to Chiquita, 1100 block of East De La Guerra, 1100 block of East Ortega, along with a small little street, El Aquila, I believe it's called, and that is right off of East Ortega. So you received the email, everything was specified, but once again, myself, and I know many people in District 1 would prefer the DEC Community of Interest. I think I got it all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aldana. The suggestion about having certain blocks removed, about 7.5 blocks, was received by email, and I had asked through Mr. Colon to have Dr. Phillips take a look and tell us what the effect of that would be. And Dr. Phillips, you had time to do that, is that correct?
Yes.
Can you just comment on how that would look, what effect that would have on the numbers, et cetera?
So the issue is that would require splitting a census block. So we can't really know for sure what the numbers would be exactly. We'd have to estimate that by looking at how many households are in one part and how many households are in another. And that would also risk putting the Latino citizen voting age population of District 1 below 50%, because that part of the East Side neighborhood is less Hispanic or Latino than the rest of that neighborhood. So we could take a little bit out of it and still be above 50%, but to take the entirety of what was requested in the email, that would probably take us below 50%.
Thank you. I appreciate that Mr. Aldana got that to us a couple of days ago so that we had an opportunity to present this to Dr. Phillips. We can discuss this as we go along. The next speaker is Tino A. De Guevara of the Santa Barbara East Side Society.
Good afternoon, Honorable Commissioners. My name is Tino de Guevara, Agustin de Guevara, and I represent the Santa Barbara East Side Society. We are the hosts and sponsors of the Milpas Parade, as East Side Milpas Parade, as well as the Trick or Treat on Milpas Street and the Santa Barbara National Pickup Day. We are very involved with the community. I walk the businesses and the districts all the time. We have weekly or monthly meetings where we invite the public for any comments or input about their neighborhoods and their concerns. I am also a resident of the East Side in District 1. And as Mr. Aldana spoke, we do support the NDC Plan 101RE or the DEC Community Interest Plan, with some exceptions which I included in my letter of March 21st, 2022. In talking with some of the residents on Voluntario, 700 block of Voluntario Street, there are at least 4 to 5 families that are of Hispanic descent on that block. And so we are requesting the following be added to District 1 on the plan, on either of those plans. Those would include the 600 and 700 blocks of Voluntario, the 1100 block of East Ortega, the 600 block of and it should be La Aguila, not La Quila. That's somehow that got mixed up in the planning, but La Aguila means the eagle. Including the 1100 block of East De La Guerra Street, the 1100 and 1200 block of East Coda, and the 1300 block up to Chiquita. Now, those are in order of priority that we requested in our letter. The aforementioned blocks are composed of primarily Hispanic or minority residents, and if you walk those blocks and knock on doors, you will see for yourself that people there are either minority or Hispanic descent. These people support our efforts on the east side for cultural events and activities. So we really request that those be added and included into either one of those maps. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Guevara. And I'm assuming that Judge Khan and Judge White will ask any questions as you have them as you go along. Okay. The next speaker will be Kristen Snedden, Councilwoman Snedden.
Thank you, Honorable Commissioners. I really want to express my appreciation, and as you said, it's not possible to make everyone happy and to listen to everything. I think you have pulled off the impossible. It is, you've listened to the community, you've made adjustments at every meeting, you've kept neighborhoods together, and really in a city where you might not have been that familiar, you've become so familiar and really listened to our concerns. I also support the DEC Community of Interest Plan or 101 RE. They're quite similar. If it is possible for that northeast corner to be retained within District 1, it makes sense because that road, Milpas, comes up and curves around, and it really sort of creates a physical barrier that keeps a neighborhood together. And if it needs to be the census block or taking the chance on those estimates, I think it would be worthwhile to have that northeast corner retained within District 1. And then that little jutting out portion that contains the Montecito Country Club, I realize there aren't residents there. Maybe there's 0 residents, I'm not sure. But that could stay in District 4, and then the rest of that northeast corner of District 1 be retained within District 1. I think that would be physically appropriate, neighborhood appropriate, and would make more sense, actually. But if nothing else can change, I'm fully supportive of the DEC Community of Interest Plan, and really thank you for your considerations.
Could I just ask, Councilwoman, are you referring to the tiny little bit of pink that kind of extends out here, the
Ye-
slender line?
Yes, and that's Montecito Country Club, and I don't think it doesn't have any residents, but I'm not sure if there are any residents in there, if that helps at all to bring in the northeast corner back into District 1.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
And our next speaker will be Councilman Oscar Gutierrez.
Hello, and I just want to thank you all for the hard work that you've put into this. I've been able to review the new map, and I think it really encompasses the West Side community well. I know it wasn't an easy job, so I greatly appreciate all your efforts and look forward to your decision.
Thank you. Okay, I don't have any other public comment requests from those in attendance. Any Zoom requests?
Let's check. If there's anyone in the public that'd like to speak on the item before us, please click on the hand raise feature. There is one hand raised. I will unmute you, Frankie from Cause. You may go ahead. Unmute yourself and you may speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Hello, everybody. I know I had Frankie. It's Frank Rodriguez with Cause here in Santa Barbara. Like everybody, wanted to definitely thank the commission for taking in all the public comment, listening, and I really appreciated the summary that was given in the beginning of kind of the conversations that have been going on in deciding the city council districts for as we move forward. As Cause, we definitely appreciate uplifting the Latino citizen voting age and also the people of color voting age population in districts 1 and 3 in order to really fulfill the judgment from the Banales case. As cause, we have been really supporting MAP DEC Plan EUB because it does have that high CVAP representation for communities of color. And compared to the new COI map, for Plan EUB, it would be a people of color district that we believe of 59% in District 1 and 54% in District 3. And really appreciate, especially for the West Side, that has had the biggest disruption from, I think, just gentrification and also folks being pushed out and a huge drop in, especially the people of color population in the West Side, making sure those same people are able to voice those concerns of being displaced from their community and really prioritized representing people. That's why we appreciate the 101 freeway not being a dividing line, but going over to the Castillo boundary to properly represent the West Side. And we appreciate the comments that folks have been saying in making sure that East Beach stays a part of the East Side because of just the history of that area and the connection, especially amongst people of color in that region. I think the one we favor the most is from the District Elections Committee was Plan EUB, but also did like Plan EU and the other ones, but we on 104E, but understand that and the need for East Beach to stay with District 1. And that is all my comments. Thank you, commissioners.
Could I ask a question? I think you said, and I was trying to type so I could read it, that you believe that EUB has 59% total minority CVAP in District 1 and 54% in District 3. Is that what you said?
That was my assumption looking at the demographics, but I see it didn't always total to 100%. So down to get clarity on what those numbers would be, but it definitely seemed like the Plan EUB would have around 54% for minority or people of color, citizen voting age population, while the community of interest map barely reached the threshold of just getting to 50% people of color, citizen voting age population. Down to get clarity on that, but yeah, that's what we saw looking at demographic pages.
Okay. I'm going to ask Dr. Phillips if you have any comment on that, because we asked a few questions about having a total minority rather than just a Latino minority numbers, but I don't remember numbers that high being mentioned before.
Yeah, the final slide of my presentation actually has a table with the CVAP numbers for the total minority CVAP numbers in District 3. Would you like me to go to that now or wait until I get to that point in my presentation?
It'll probably be easier for you to do it in order, so
Okay.
I know that you'll answer my question.
Okay.
So I may have inadvertently done something. Oh, okay. By not letting Dr. Phillips speak first. So there are no more public comments as far as I can tell.
There are two
Oh,
more.
there are two more.
Two more virtually.
Thank you very much.
Chair. Next is M. Aguilar.
you.
Next is M. Aguilar. You may go ahead and speak.
Great, thank you. This is Mark Aguilar. Thank you, commissioners, for your community effort here. I'll make this brief. As a resident of the current District 6, I live on the east side of Highway 101, so I'm at the western border of the current district. I'm supportive of NDC Plan 104E or NDC Plan 101RE. I feel that the freeway is a significant boundary between the west downtown neighborhood and the west side. I have plenty of friends on the west side, and I would love to live on the west side, but bringing District 3 over to Castillo does not seem to be proper representation for the western edge of the north downtown. Most of my activities would take me inward to the district, excuse me, not outward or westward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aguilar.
Well, what were
Mr.
those,
Khan.
yeah, what were those districts again that you mentioned that you were favoring?
The maps, I mean?
Yeah,
Sorry,
rather than maps.
Maps, supportive of 101RE or 104E as the western boundary of District 6 would be the Highway 101 freeway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aguilar. And there's one more comment.
Yes, there's one more comment. Jacqueline Inda. Jacqueline Inda, you may go ahead.
Redistricting Commission and Community. My name is Jacqueline Inda. I am one of the folks from the District Elections Committee. Here, just thanking you for this process. We understand that this is an arduous process. And my comment is really to stick to the sole purpose of district elections in our judgment, which is to really try to retain as much as possible the voting age populations within the district. And so we definitely support our District Elections Committee working through this process with the city and presenting the maps that we have. And we're here just to appreciate the process and be thankful that there are people who really are paying attention to the majority minority communities and getting them as close to 50% as possible and keeping at least one majority minority community district, although really the hope would be to have two. We thank you for this process and we thank the community for the participation and we look forward to the final decision.
Thank you.
Let me just check if there's
Yes.
any other comments. If there's anyone in the public that would like to speak to the commission on item before us, please click on the hand raise feature. There are no other hands raised, Chair.
All right. So I think I may have inadvertently switched the order of things, but that's fine. We seem to have plenty of time today. So I am going to invite Dr. Phillips, who has been tutoring us. Considering he's about the age he should be to be my grandchild, I feel very tutored by him and very well tutored by him over the last few months. Please, Dr. Phillips, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Honorable Madam Chair. And this afternoon, we'll be giving the final presentation for this redistricting process. And again, you'll see on this first slide the map of the districts in their current form. Now, the criteria for drawing these districts, or redrawing them in this case, come from federal and state law. Under federal law, we have the requirements that they be equal in population, and that means all people counted by the census in 2020, including children and non-citizens. They don't have to be exactly equal. There is some wiggle room, but that is, we have about a 10% threshold that we want to stay under. There's also the Federal Voting Rights Act to be mindful of, to not dilute the voting influence of a protected class group of people, but on the flip side, to not practice racial gerrymandering, where you make race or ethnicity the only our main consideration. Under state law, we have a rank order of criteria. So if it's not possible to adhere to all of them, you would want to prioritize the ones that are higher up in the list. The very highest of which is to draw districts that are contiguous, just one piece each. Number 2 is to avoid dividing neighborhoods and communities of interest, which are socioeconomic geographic areas that should be kept together. Number 3 is to have districts with easily identifiable boundaries. And number 4 is to have districts that are compact in that they do not bypass one group of people to get to a more distant group of people. Lastly, we have a prohibition against favoring or discriminating against a political party. On the far right side of the slide, you will see other traditional redistricting principles that you may or may not want to consider, so long as it is not at the expense of the federal and state criteria, including minimizing voters shifted to different election years, respecting voters' choices, i.e. continuity in office, accounting for future population growth, and preserving the core of existing districts. We also had the Benally stipulated judgment, which I'll read in full here. The intent of the parties is the electoral district map shall include 2 electoral districts in which Latino eligible voters constitute a majority of the eligible voters according to the most recently available relevant estimates from the Census Bureau's American Community Survey, tailored to the greatest extent possible in a manner consistent with the federal and state law, so as to address any issues of vote dilution. So At the last meeting, you narrowed down the plans that were before you to 4. And the first of those is NDC Draft Plan 101RE. Again, the letters refer to revisions that were made. First, one revision R, and then another revision E to account for the Eucalyptus Hill neighborhood by way of a census block split. So with this plan, what you'll see on the left-hand side of the slide as I go is I will be identifying areas that are moved from the current district boundaries, which are shown in black, and the current or proposed districts, which are in color. So as I do this, you'll see on the map they are identified with red arrows. So the first area that would move is the area west of Modoc Road would be moving from District 2 to District 3. Then the Brinkerhoff Avenue neighborhood would move from District 6 to District 3. And the reason why we're doing this is because District 3 is underpopulated, so it has to expand in some capacity. Then we had the West Beach neighborhood also moving into District 3 from District 2. The area east of Modoc would move from District 5 to District 2, so that District 2 has sufficient population. Also, the Las Positas Veronica Place neighborhood would move into District 2 for the same reason. Then there is the Harbor View Scenic Drive neighborhood, which would move from District 4 to District 1. So this actually is not part of the Montecito Country Club. It's part of the East Side neighborhood, which is why we are moving it from District 4 to District 1. And I can go into the interactive review map to show that more clearly. Then there is the APS/CODA/Voluntario neighborhood that will be moving from District 1 to District 4. And that is for the intent of making sure that District 1 has a Latino citizen voting age, a majority Latino citizen voting age population. And finally, the Milpas, Cannon, Perdido, Nopal, and Pamuma area would move from District 6, or move from 4 to 6. And that is for population purposes. So with this plan, District 1 is focused on the east side, but keeps a presence on State Street, including the Funk, as well as East Beach and the Funk Zone. If you are not familiar with the Funk Zone, it is a kind of restaurant and entertainment district that is located in this area that is roughly the red circle you see there. So those would all be included in District 1 under that plan. District 2 is focused on the Mesa, but keeps the City College, Harbor, and Stearns Wharf in District 2. District 3 is focused on the west side, but now includes La Cumbre Junior High School and the West Beach neighborhood. So it gets a piece of the coast in that sense. District 4 is focused on the Riviera, but keeps a small coastal presence, just like under the current configuration. District 5 is focused on Upper State, but keeps a small coastal presence down by Hendry's Beach. And District 6 is focused on downtown, and it does not cross the freeway. The boundary between 6 and 3 is stays along the freeway until you get down to Ortega. So with this plan, the total population deviation is just over 6%. Like I said, you have a majority of the citizen voting age population being Latino in District 1. In District 3, it would be 42%. So now we turn to NDC Plan 104E. So again, this map shows the current districts with the black lines, and then the proposed districts are in color. So here, the area west of Modoc would move from 2 to 3. The Brinkerhoff Avenue would move from 6 to 3. Again, remember we have to expand 3 because it's underpopulated. And the area between Garden and State would move from 1 to 3. So that would make Garden Street the boundary of District 3. The area around Harding Elementary School would move from 3 to 2 because that area is less Hispanic. And the East Beach neighborhood would move from 1 to 2 so that District 2 has sufficient population. Harbor View Scenic Drive from 4 to 1, just like in the last plan. And the area around Santa Barbara High School would move from Districts 4 and 6 to District 1. The area north of the high school would move from 6 to 4. And finally, to make sure 6 has enough people, the area east of MODOC would move from Districts 3 and 5 to District 6. So the consequence of this plan, 104E, would be that District 1 is still focused on the east side, but it's now bounded by Garden Street and the freeway. District 2 is still focused on the Mesa, but now covers the whole waterfront area out to East Beach. District 3 is focused on the west side, but now includes La Cumbre Junior High School and reaches out to Garden Street. District 4 is focused on the Riviera, but keeps a small coastal presence. 5 focused on Upper State, but still a small coastal presence. 6 focused on downtown, but it crosses the freeway to gain the area east of MODOC, so it's not completely on the east side of the freeway like you had with the last plan. The total population deviation of this plan is higher. It's greater than 8%. You have a 51% Latino CVAP in District 1 and 45% in District 3. That leads us to DEC Plan EU, and this is the plan that, it's not to be confused with EUB. This is what was originally presented. The area around Harding Elementary School moves from 3 to 2. The area between Castillo Street and the freeway, south of Mission Street, moves from District 6 to District 3. So this would allow District 3 to include the West Side Neighborhood Center. The Brinkerhoff Avenue neighborhood moves from 6 to 3 so that 3 has enough people in it. And the area between Garden and State moves from District 1 to Districts 3 and 6. The Funk Zone would move from 1 to 2. The East Beach neighborhood moves from 1 to 4. And the Harbor View Scenic Drive neighborhood moves from 4 to 1. Santa Barbara High School area into 1. The area around MODOC Road on both sides of the road has to move into District 6 because District 6 doesn't have enough people as it is. District 6 loses quite a lot of people if 3 goes out to Castillo. So to compensate for that population loss, it has to go pretty far into the west side on that side of the freeway. And finally, Las Positas Veronica Place goes into District 2 for population purposes. So District 1 would be focused on the east side and bounded by Garden and the freeway. District 2 is focused on the Mesa, but now covers the Funk Zone. District 3 is focused on the west side, but now includes more area east of the freeway. District 4 is focused on the Riviera, but expands its coastal presence by including East Beach. And District 5 is focused on Upper State, but keeps a small coastal presence. And District 6 is focused on downtown, but crosses the freeway to gain the area around MODOC. This has a fairly high population deviation of 9.3%. And you have 51% Latino CVAP in District 1 and 46% in District 3, which is just barely a plurality. However, we have to be mindful there's margins of errors that are involved in these estimates. So that takes us to DEC Plan EUB, the B referring to the beach because East Beach is now included in District 1 under this plan. So I'm going to go through these quickly because it's very similar to what you have with the original EU as far as the shifts. The one thing that changes is that since District 1 retains the East Beach, it has to lose that northeastern corner that people have been talking about in order to ensure it's still a majority Latino CVAP district. It really is a pretty clear trade-off. If District 1 is to maintain the beach, it has to lose this corner in order to be a majority Latino district. If it keeps the corner, then it probably has to lose the beach. Again, in order to be a majority Latino district as the ACS estimates have it. So 1 is focused on the east side and is still bounded by Garden Street, but it keeps East Beach. District 2 is a Mesa district, but it goes out to the Funk Zone. 3 is the same as you have with the original EU. 4 is now only a small coastal presence. 5 is the same. Really, 5 is the same for all of these plans. And 6 is the same as the last plan, EU. You still have a 9.3 total population deviation. That hasn't changed with the adjustments that have been made, and you have no changes in the 1 and 3 CVAP numbers as well. So that leads us to the final plan, which was actually submitted after your most recent meeting, and it was developed by me in collaboration with the District Elections Committee, and so it's being titled DEC Community of Interest Plan. And this really is even more of a minimal change plan than the 101 RE. So the only areas that move are the area west of Modoc from 2 to 3, because again, 3 needs more people. The area east of Modoc goes from 5 to 2. 5 is too overpopulated, so it has to lose that area, and it makes the most sense going into 2. The area between Castillo Street and the freeway, south of Victoria Street, which would include the West Side Neighborhood Center, moves from District 6 to District 3. So you don't have a strip that goes all the way up to Mission like you do in the other DEC plans. You have about 6 blocks that would be between Victoria and Ortega Street on that side of the freeway. The Milpas, Cannon, Perdido, Nopal, Anapamu area moves from 4 to 6. If 6 is going to lose this area, it has to pick up a population, and so we take it out to Milpa Street. APS Code of Ontario moves from 1 to 4 for reasons stated earlier. And the Harbor View Scenic Drive neighborhood moves from 4 to 1, as is the case with all the other plans. District 1 is focused on the east side, but keeps a presence on State Street and East Beach, including the Funk Zone. District 2 is focused on the Mesa, but keeps all of West Beach and now goes east of Modoc Road. District 3 is focused on the west side, but now includes La Cumbre Junior High School and the West Side Neighborhood Center on Castillo Street. District 4 is focused on the Riviera, but keeps a small coastal presence. 5, the same as before. And 6, focused on downtown, and it does not cross the freeway. The total population deviation is 7.5% roughly. And at the request of the District Elections Committee, we report the CVAP numbers out to the 10th decimal place. So for District 1, it would be 50.4% Latino. District 3, 43.4% Latino. And then also at the request, we give the total minority CVAP for District 3, which is just barely a majority, which is 50.0%, a little bit more than that. So that takes me to the final slide, which compares the 5 plans. And so I'll go through these pretty methodically, but if you want me to pause or have a question, feel free to let me know. The first column is the plan name. Second is total population deviation. And you'll see that the lowest is the NDC 101RE. The highest are these original DEC plans, and then the others are in the middle. We have District 1's Latino citizen voting age population, and they are all greater than 50%. District 3's Latino citizen voting age population, they're all greater than 40%, but there is more of a disparity. These original DEC plans are up to 46.3, and then 101RE has the lowest at 41.7. MCVAP is the total minority, so basically the non-white citizen voting age population. You have, you would not have a minority District 3 under NDC 101RE, but you would have it with the other 4 plans. In these cases, it's a bare majority, and in these cases, it's higher. The number of districts on the coast, with the 101RE plan, it's 5 districts, all but District 6, although District 3 is just barely the case. And then with 104E and DEC-EU, it's 3, and then 4 with the other DEC plans. The number of districts on State Street, there are, all 6 are on State Street under 101RE, although District 2 is just barely. And then you have, that's also the case with DEC-EUB and DEC-COI, and then the others are 5, all but District 1. So when it comes to which areas our landmarks are in which districts, that is what you'll see on the remainder of the table. So with West Beach, it's in District 2 under all the plans except for 101RE, where it ends up in District 3 to give it some coastal access. With the Funk Zone, it's in District 1 under 101RE and DEC-COI, but in District 2 in the other plans. The East Beach is in District 1, except for 104E, which is in 2, and DEC-EU, which is in 4. Santa Barbara High School is in District 1 for 3 of the plans, but District 6 for the other 2. La Cumbre Junior High School is in District 3 for 3 of the plans, but District 6 for the original DEC plans. Harding Elementary School is actually split under 101RE. It's kept whole in District 2 in these 3 plans, and it's kept whole in District 3 in DEC-COI. And finally, the West Side Neighborhood Center is in District 6 in the NDC plans. It's in District 3 in the DEC plans. And that's the end of my presentation.
Let me first ask if the panelists have any questions or comments for Dr. Phillips.
I have a question. I don't know what technically to call it, but did you do a cluster, census cluster analysis, however you do it, so that, you know, you're satisfied that each of these plans does not run afoul of any racial gerrymandering?
Your Honor, do you happen to mean a compactness test? Is that what you're referring to?
I know at one other prior meeting, Mr. Coloni referred to some kind of color analysis.
I believe Dr. Phillips, excuse me, Your Honor, I believe Dr. Phillips referred to that as the heat map.
Yes,
map.
yeah. So what we did at a prior meeting was use a heat map which shows block by block the percentage of Latino citizen voting in each population. And then as a exercise or a test plan, we just tried to see if it was possible to have a majority Latino CVAP District 3. And it is possible, but you had to do very wild contortions, which would probably be considered racial gerrymandering.
Okay.
The salamander, right?
Yeah.
What's that test called again? A heat what?
We used a heat map and then drew a test plan using that heat map.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, which is a follow-up to Mr. Saldana's comments and his email of today to us. He wants to have us consider whether we should essentially include several other blocks, which he articulated here today, and I was madly writing my notes, but unfortunately couldn't get down every single block that he was referencing, but I assume that you have that information. What impact would that have, and would there be a concern that if we shifted things, perhaps we might create problems in terms of other districts?
Yes, Your Honor, and I can show you that on the interactive review map. So let's just take, I'm going to uncheck the current plan, but leave the outlines. And then I'm going
Can I
to,
add to that, that appears to be, those identical blocks appears to be the exact same blocks that were referred to by Mr. Di Guevara. So with regard to whatever you're going to say, it applies to their request to include those blocks as well, right?
I believe so, yes, Your Honor. So I'm going to check NDC Plan 101RE because it's one of the plans that takes that corner out of District 1 and places it with District 4. So if I zoom in here, you can see what the exact boundaries of that area are. And that would be Voluntario, Coda, APS, or Alameda Padre Serra, De La Guerra Road, and then there would be, I don't think there's a street here, but it would follow the neighborhood boundary. This white line is considered, at least by the City of Santa Barbara Planning Department, the boundary of the east side neighborhood. So under the current plan, the current district boundary follows that neighborhood line so that the whole neighborhood is in District 1. So the reason that we're proposing removing this from District 1 is because the Latino CVAP numbers, if the goal of the commission is to have District 1 be a majority Latino citizen voting age population, like I said, you have a trade-off. You either keep East Beach and remove that corner, or remove East Beach and keep that corner. And what it comes down to is the percent citizen voting age population Latino numbers. And so the East Beach area is very low Hispanic population. And that corner is also quite low relative to the rest of the district. So if you follow my cursor, it's along Voluntario and Coda. These are estimates, of course. They may not be totally accurate, but this is the best available data we have. And so using that, we came to the conclusion that it's either this area or this area if you want a majority Latino CVAP District 1. So given how many comments we received that the East Beach belongs with District 1, then that means that this area has to be removed from District 1 and placed with District 4. There is these colors are census block by census block. So the limitation is the census block boundaries, which do not exactly follow the house or parcel lines, and the proposal by one of the public commenters was to have some of the houses in this block end up in District 1 and some end up in District 4. So the houses that are up closer to Alameda Padre Serra would end up in District 4, and these ones on Coda would end up in District 1. So we would have to split this census block in order to accomplish that. We would have to estimate how many people live in this side versus this side. And crucially, in order to estimate the CVAP numbers, all we could do is assume that the CVAP percentage in this part is the same as the percentage of this part. That's probably not the case in reality, but we have no better methodology. So we are just barely at the majority of 50.4% with Latino CVAP in District 1. So if we were to cut out part of this block and give it to District 1, we would risk taking that number below 50%.
Thank you.
Because of my jumping the gun there a little bit, there may be some additional comments from the public based on Dr. Phillips' presentation as compared to my summary of what was said. I can't tell you how much I hate seeing myself on a camera. I'm going to look directly at you from now on. And so if you'd fill out a request to comment, we'll be happy to hear from you as well. You don't need to duplicate what you said before because, as you can see, I've been typing frantically and they've been writing frantically. But if there's something additional, and I see at least one member of the public who is very interested, wasn't here during the earlier session. So we'll take sort of an in-place break for just a second and finish off with public comments, and then we'll take a break before we deliberate. If you got a slip, we'll have it just so we have a good record. Doesn't that just always shock you when you look up and you see there's always something that just floors me into? All right, good afternoon, and we'll start this semi-second round with Dr. Ebenstein.
Honorable members of the commission, thank you for your service and for your time in reviewing these issues. We've really appreciated Dr. Phillips's work on all of these areas, and I believe that you have a great deal of information before you. And to try to summarize my own views, I know you've also previously heard from some of the members of the District Elections Committee via Zoom. I think that the issue is, to what extent do you want to incorporate the input you heard from the community, particularly with respect to East Beach, in terms of that's an important issue that many people have spoken to. And I think that Dr. Phillips's comments that it's either the Voluntario Square or East Beach, they can't both be in District 1, and that for that reason, And as a result of the previous testimony you've heard, that the virtue of, in particular, the community of interest plan submitted by the District Elections Committee, which really did attempt to incorporate all of the input that's been presented at these hearings on all of the issues, when it's started with Cleveland Elementary School and the high fire area and State Street and the Upper East Side and others, and East Beach, is how can you retain as close an adherence to the requirements of the Banyalis judgment and orders, and yet at the same time accommodate current population circumstances in the city of Santa Barbara. And our view is that that's accomplished through a plan in which District 3 is a majority-minority district on citizen voting age population, because as we've discussed, it really can't be a majority Latino CVAP district. So within those contexts and within those parameters, although there are several maps before you that would meet the requirement of majority-minority CVAP district in District 3, as well as majority Latino CVAP in District 1, that can be accomplished. So we also believe that that is essential. We think that the final community of interest plan is the one that will meet the requirements of Banyalis, and yet at the same time incorporate almost all of the input that you've heard, and result in a relatively small number of individuals being shifted from one district to another. So it adheres closely to the neighborhood communities of interest that have been developed over time with the existing council districts. And we think that's important too, because looking forward, what that means is that after the 2030 census, there would be lines in place that would have basically been in place since 2015. There'll be very solid lines, and Banyalis is no longer a requirement at that point in time, but then you'll have districts that have been largely in place for 15 years and that we think will carry the spirit of the Banyalis decision forward into the future, and presuming that there won't be any sort of undercounts or issues with respect to the census at that point in time, we think too that that's an argument in favor of the final proposal of the community of interest plan. So thank you for your time, again, for your consideration. These are very important issues for the city of Santa Barbara, and I think that the virtue of the public input process is when plans are influenced by what public input is, and that's certainly what we've attempted to do, and we encourage you to consider that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor. Any questions of Dr. Ebenstein? Okay. Sebastian Aldana, Jr.
Okay, Sebastian Aldana, Jr. here. And once again, I do support, of all the plans, I do support the DEC Community of Interest Plan. So that's step one. I support it 100%. But if there could be some changes, and the key word being if, it's the upper northeast corner. At the last meeting, I asked what was the population in that area, and I believe it was 26% Latino. That's what I was told. I believe that's what you mentioned, Doctor. Well, that's what I remember. I didn't take notes, just going off memory. And in my opinion, the 26% is in the lower flatland area. The other 74% is in the upper area. So I know, I just heard that it's either or, but on that upper northeast corner, I don't think the proper homework has been done yet. So if that could be looked at and seeing if North Voluntario could be included. And if, I think before a final decision is made, you have to do your homework. There's 26% Latino there. So now we just got to find them. So, and again, I'm 99% positive, they're in the lower area, lower portion. The upper area, which is APS, De La Guerra Road, you're going to find very few. So all I ask is that you look in that area and see if it's possible. And if not, I support the DEC community of interest. Well, regardless, I support it, but I just like to see if it can be changed just a wee bit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Sneddon.
Thank you. I also want to see if there's any possible way for that northeast corner to stay in District 1. And a further consideration, I didn't realize it till we reviewed the parameters for choosing districts, but that minimizing voter shifts in years. So District 4 just had an election 2021 November for a 5-year term. So those individuals, District 1 is on the different timeline, 4 years. So those voters in that corner would have, if I'm calculating it right, maybe an 8-year gap before they can vote in a district election again. It's not the case if it's shifting the other direction, but a shift from District 1 to District 4 takes them out of the cycle for 5 years, and their last election cycle was 2 years prior, 2 to 3 years prior. So that's something to consider. And then in the same way of maintaining neighborhood integrity, that is called the East Side neighborhood in there. And those are pretty spaced apart, and I do think probably that, I know you can't make a decision on this, but that the numbers are higher of Latino voters or population in that area. And then earlier, I misspoke. That little finger earlier used to be Montecito Country Club, but I believe now, is that Scenic Drive? Oh, okay, so that could go either way. Half of that block has apartments, very dense apartments, and I do think they belong on the east side and would help the numbers. But that northeast corner, that voter shift in years is significant if it shifts to District 4.
So can I ask, the last election that District 1 had was in
Help me, 2019.
2019?
Well, District 1?
2018, okay. And so then the next election would be, if this was moved to District 4, 2026, and that's where you got the 8-year
Yeah,
wait. Okay.
because that's also a 5-year term since we shifted to the 5 years. So the term for District 4 just started and is the start of a 5-year before there would be an opportunity to vote again.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. I have in the back of my mind heard the number 26% before as well, and I think you said to us that the colors represent gradations of Latino population, and if it's one color, it's under 20%, and if it's another color, it's 20 to 50, that kind of thing. Is that accurate, that little northeast corner is 26% Latino overall?
Yeah, so, yes, Your Honor. So if we look at the legend for this Latino CVAP layer, you'll see that almost all of this corner that we propose giving to District 4 is less than 25% citizen voting age population. There is one block that would be higher, which is a 35 to 50% block, and I might even be able to tell you it's 49%. So it's just shy of a majority in that block. So, yeah, I think it may be fair to say that, again, probabilistically, given what we see in this little block, if we look at this big block, this part of that block is likely to match the color that we see here. It's just we have no, the way our methodology works is we don't make that assumption. I know we have Dr. Johnson on the call. Perhaps he might want to speak to this maybe a little better than I can. Is he available to chime in?
And before he does, what you're saying, though, is there has to be some balance if we move some of that little corner, we've called it, into District 1, some beach area is going to have to go.
Actually, no. It's
No.
When it comes to population purposes, it's fine to add that. We're just talking about the Latino CVAP numbers would be affected.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question, which is you mentioned splitting census blocks, and we did that with Eucalyptus Hill. So I'm curious, if we split a census block, are we going to have a rather unusual boundary? If we went block by block, we're going to end up with something that looks a little odd.
It depends on if we were to split it, where you would like us to split it. There was a proposal to split it a certain way based on street blocks. I'm pulling up a base map that I'm hoping will show the individual houses. So if you see here, I believe the proposal was to have the boundary go on East Coda, then go up Chiquita, then go through here in between houses, and then probably come up to Soledad, and then go on De La Guerra, and then up here. So it would be kind of a, what's the word?
Let me chime in on that.
Yeah.
Because I think while I fully understand the goals of the community group, the description of how to split the block is based on where the community group members live, which I understand. But it would be splitting it in order to separate a handful of Latino families from the rest of the block, which comes very close to racial gerrymandering. So while we might look at moving the block, I would strongly suggest not splitting that census block along those lines, just because it would be purely, while it's not out of any malicious intent, obviously, it would be splitting the block based on the ethnicity of the families on different parts of the blocks, which is probably closer to racial gerrymandering than I'd suggest the commission consider.
And as I understand our last legal memo, malicious intent is irrelevant. It's the effect that matters, correct?
Yes and no. I agree with Dr. Johnson, but I'd like to give the legal advice on it. The only testimony that I heard that addresses a non-ethnic or racial grounds for making that block split was the testimony from Councilmember Sneddon about avoiding shifting election years. That, of course, you remember from the first table Dr. Phillips showed is the tertiary concern over on the far right. So I think this does raise an issue the commission needs to grapple with as to whether this kind of move would be predominantly based on race or ethnicity.
And just to agree with what the city attorney just told you, avoiding the election shift would involve a decision on whether or not to move the whole block, rather than splitting it. So, if I'm understanding it correctly, so I think that would be something to consider. But that would, as Dr. Phillips noted, drop you below 50% Latino CVAP in that district.
All right. Those are all of the public comments from those in attendance. Any Zoom comments? There are none. Okay.
If there's anyone in the public that would like to speak on the item of the NDC presentation, please raise your hand. If there's anyone in the public that would like to speak on the NDC presentation, please raise your hand. There are no hands raised, Chair.
Ladies and gentlemen, as pre-planned, we're not allowed to talk in advance very much, but we can talk about restroom breaks. So we have pre-planned that we'll take a brief break now, and then we'll commence our public deliberations, about 10 minutes. Okay. Probably, like most people in the world, you have your view of how judges operate from what you've seen on television and the movies. We can assure you it's nothing like that. We never pound a gavel, ever. Almost no one ever yells and screams at us or tries to shoot us or anything. And we seldom make intentionally wrong rulings to keep the plot line moving along. But what we do is collaborate on decision-making. Very frequently, even if you're a single judge hearing a case, you will go back over the lunch hour, the break, and run ideas past your fellow judges. And if you're sitting on a 3-judge panel in a court or in an arbitration, for example, you hear all the evidence and then you retire to a room and you discuss. So this is a novel experience for us to discuss in public. But we're mentally prepared to do it, and we've complied assiduously with the rules not to discuss any of this in advance. So a little bit of what anybody says may be something of a surprise. Although, honestly, as you've seen, we've made so much progress based on your comments and Dr. Phillips' work along with the DEC to create something that's going to be pretty close to what we'd all like to have, that we have good materials to work with. But I'm going to start by asking each of my fellow panelists to make a few remarks of their own about the process that we've been through and what we're about to begin. Judge Kahn?
I wasn't sure if I would be asked to make some comments or not, so I wrote some thoughts. And probably would have been better if I had typed it, double-spaced it, and that way I'd be sure to articulate each and every word. So if I skip a beat, it's because I probably can't read my own writing. We've heard from many members of the various districts within the city of Santa Barbara, inclusive of council members. We've attempted, to the extent possible, to maintain the existing character of these communities, while at the same time addressing mandated requirements that consisted of the 2015 stipulated order and judgment in Banales, which stipulated judgment also embraced and required adherence with applicable federal and state law, including the California Voting Rights Act, the Constitution of the United States and of the state of California, the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965 is amended, the criteria set forth in California Election Code 21620, requiring districts to be nearly equal in population based on the latest federal decennial census, comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act, and consider topography, geography, cohesiveness, contiguity, integrity, compactness of territory, and community of interest in each of the districts, and consistent therewith to include 2 electoral districts in which Latino eligible voters constitute a majority of the eligible voters, tailored to the greatest extent possible in a manner consistent with the applicable law, recognizing the prohibition against racial gerrymandering and the standard of federal strict scrutiny limitations on the intentional use of race as a predominant redistricting criteria in the creation of electoral districts, as opposed to the use of other factors such as socio and economic factors and communities of interest. So we have attempted to abide by these requirements, and while we've had a lot of discussions about we'd like this part to remain in the district and this part to be considered, there's really been very little discussion about the law that applies, and yet we as judges are obligated to adhere to the spirit and intent of the law in trying to address the various needs of the community. And so, with all those things in mind, And considering the very important task that you've placed before us, we will try to do our best. But as I have said before, we're just probably not going to be able to pick a map that makes everyone 100% happy. So I'll relinquish the floor now to my colleague.
Judge Johnson and Judge Kahn, it has been a pleasure working with both of you, and I can assure you that we've not talked about anything relating to our maps. We did have the pleasure of commuting together from Ventura, where Judge Johnson lives, so that Judge Kahn and I did not have to drive the whole way alone. So we had the pleasure of getting to know each other a bit, and I can tell you it's been a pleasure working with them. But the real pleasure has been being here with you and learning more about your community. We owe a debt of gratitude to the City Attorney's Office, Mr. Ariel Colon, and Ms. Sosa Acosta. We owe a debt of gratitude to Dr. Phillips, Dr. Johnson, but the gratitude really is to this community. When Judge Johnson suggested that we do a road trip, I was elated because, like Judge Johnson, I came here as a child. I think we went to the zoo. I think we went to the beach. And when I got older, it was a real pleasure to be taken to the former Biltmore Hotel. So my exposure has been as a tourist. I also had the pleasure of taking our son, who was at the time at UC Santa Barbara, to dinner here. So we were on State Street for his graduation party. So again, we have a very, very limited view of your city, coming into your city from Ventura, Los Angeles, anywhere else in the country or in the world for that matter. My sense of this community is heightened by the people that I've heard from here in this room and previously. I went through a list of them and I was going to name them, but you know, in the Academy Awards, you never name people because you're bound to exclude somebody, and I would never want to do that. But I want to thank Dr. Evenstein and his work. It's been very, very helpful. And here is the issue, which has been alluded to by both Judge Johnson and Judge Kahn. What we've tried to do is to make everyone happy. And in life, you can't always make everyone happy. I think we tell our children, you know, you have to accept the best that you can be, but you can't always be perfect. And so in looking at these maps, and I'm kind of going back and thinking about all of the iterations of the maps that we've gone through, and it's been sort of like whack-a-mole. You look at this part, and it pops up with a problem on the other part. And when we did that just now at Mr. Aldana's urging, that's exactly the problem that we ran into. So when I look at this, I think we have achieved the best possible result. And you know, I would nominate, and I'm going to be the first one to do this, I support and would nominate DEC Plan COI. It was created as the last map, the last iteration of the various maps that we've looked at. It seems to address all of the factors that we need to look at, starting with the Voting Rights Act at the federal level, looking at the California law. It's geographically contiguous. There's an undivided community of interest. There are easily identifiable boundaries. It's compact, and it is in compliance with Banales. And the one thing that I looked at when we got this DEC Community of Interest plan, I was very, very concerned about the total population deviation, because one of the things we learned early on in this process is you do not want to exceed 10% and hopefully not get even close to 10%. So many of the other maps had, you know, perhaps a higher population of Latino CVAP, but you would see the population deviation go up. So 7.4 is within the guidelines that we're looking to. We're minimizing the shifting of voters between districts. We're taking into account future population growth. We're preserving the core of the existing districts. And I think we're there. I do want to point out that it was wonderful hearing from the city council persons you provided great impact. And I vividly recall the evening when we were sitting, not in this room, but one of the other venues, and I can't tell you exactly where it was, when we heard from everybody from Eucalyptus Hill, and they were all incredibly concerned, and rightfully so, because that's a fire zone. And it was one of these little blips that occurred because of a census block. And we looked to Dr. Phillips, and he solved it. He solved the census block problem, and we got those Eucalyptus Hill people back into District 4, back into the area where they can legitimately be represented and their concerns addressed about being in a fire zone. Nothing was more vivid to me, and I'm sure to the other IRC members, than taking the van up through those narrow roads into the upper Riviera and looking at potentially how dry that brush is and how combustible that area is. And so that drove home to me just how important it was to keep Eucalyptus Hill and make that area fine. And then the other moment I remember vividly is Councilperson Snedden saying, it's too rich. We don't need the beach. And I thought, oh my goodness, how generous. So we looked at all of these things. We listened to you. We've taken copious notes. I think we're at the end of this process. I feel very comfortable with nominating DEC Community of Interest. It has been a pleasure working with all of you, meeting all of you, and I so appreciate the work of the City Attorney's Office, Dr. Phillips, Dr. Johnson, and all of you. You've been wonderful to work with.
Judge Kahn, do you want to comment on DEC COI or make any other nomination?
No, I share the views of my colleague, and I have read the views of others in connection with that proposed plan. Those views were that the districts appear to be contiguous, respect the integrity of local neighborhoods and communities of interest, are compact and easily identifiable and substantially equal in population, that they were not the product of racial gerrymandering or partisan favoritism, and comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act, the California Voting Rights Act, state election law, and the state and federal constitution. So I would second her nomination of that proposed plan.
As I looked over all the plans that we still had in the running last night and the new community of interest plan, a couple of things came to me. I will tell you, I'm not trying to be suspenseful here, I agree wholeheartedly with both of the other commissioners. I think that this plan has addressed those issues that have been raised. One additional issue was raised today, and I appreciate very much Councilmember Snedden's comments that the people in this one little block will go for many years without voting in a city council election, which is a two-edged sword. As Mr. Colon said, the problem with looking at it from that perspective is that we would be perilously close to slightly gerrymandering something because of ethnicity, for the sole reason of ethnicity. And that concerns me very much. I would hate us to do all this work and you to have done all this work for us to run afoul, because we all know we're a litigious world, and no matter how wonderful a map is, there'll be someone out there who'd be happy to challenge it, and if that were the grounds, then that were the grounds, and we don't want that to be a loose end. And I'll also say, with respect to any plan that includes District 1, unfortunately we can't get District 3 there, but District 1 having beach area. One of the members of the public said something to me that really hit home. When you first did the districting in 2015, it was decided that every district should have a piece of both the downtown area and the beach area, if at all possible. And I thought, well, sure, those are the big revenue producers, the tourist attractions, a lot of employment, et cetera. And so those districts deserve particularly strong representation. And this member really said to me, you know, you're looking at it from the wrong direction, actually, because if you're a district and you have something so important to the city in your district, that gives you, as a district and as a representative of a district, more influence, more ability to get what your district needs, because you have things that are important to the city as a whole in a different way than just your own particular needs. And so I very much like having the West Beach be in District 1, and the East Beach be in District 1. You know, the first maps I got, I had them upside down, so the East Beach be in District 1. I'm not trying to redistrict as I sit here on the fly. But I agree with the other members that the preferable plan is the DEC Community of Interest. And I thank very much the members of the DEC and Dr. Phillips for working together so hard on this, and Dr. Johnson as well, I'm sure, to present this to us, because it made the ultimate decision very important and straightforward. I have a very good friend who told me that, an older man who sadly died, but he said there's only 3 rules to leading a good life: be of service, practice gratitude, and ask the right questions. And I think what we've done over the last several weeks is ask the right questions. We hope we've been of service, and we're very, very grateful. So we will recommend to the City Council on April 12th that they adopt the DEC Community of Interest Plan for the next redistricting.
So should we put it to a formal vote?
Let's do it to a vote. We have a nomination by Judge White.
So moved.
By Judge Khan.
So second.
Let's actually take a roll. Can you let's take a roll call vote?
Chair Johnson,
I approve. I recommend DEC Community of Interest Plan.
Honorable White,
I recommend DEC Community of Interest Plan.
Honorable Khan,
I concur, the DEC Community of Interest Plan.
Thank you. Is there any other business that we need to conduct, Mr. Colon, before adjourning?
No, Your Honor. Just to clarify, the order we received from Judge Geck extending our time from November 1 actually has you referring the map to the city clerk, who will then present it to the city council. And we'll treat the motion in that vein.
It will be subject to that friendly amendment. Okay. We will be at the city council meeting on April 12th. It is our plan to attend in case there are any questions of us. And we will prepare something. I've committed to Mr. Colon something in writing. It's been called findings in fact and findings of law. Not quite the way we would put it, but we understand what is intended, and we will prepare that for the city council. Thank you very much to everyone here today. And we're adjourned.
Do we need to make a motion? Do we need
Motion
to move to adjourn?
We have done that in the past.
Yeah.
I think we know what we're doing.